Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. We like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. On this episode, I'm chatting with an old friend, Ethan Abitz. Ethan and I first connected over 3 years ago on Instagram, which is shocking, I know. And I've loved following all of his adventures since then. Ethan is more than just a cabin photographer. He's also a videographer, a world traveler, and even now a model. On today's episode, we cover all of these things, and we try to find Ethan a date. I'll be honest, this one is less cabin heavy and more human heavy, but I loved every second of it, and I hope you guys do too. Let's do it. Hey, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you finally face to face. I feel like we always talk just like through text or Instagram or anything. So
I know,
yeah.
although I am going to take credit that one of your very first Zoom calls during COVID was with me. Do you
Yes, it
remember
was.
that?
I do. Was that about the Cabin 101 thing that we started?
No, which is a
No, it
top
was just a Zoom call.
secret project that has not happened
Yes,
yet for anyone
yes.
listening. No, that was way before that. It was when I just started the Instagram for Cozy Rock, and I wanted to
Oh,
do video content that I thought would be helpful and interesting. So basically, it was
right.
like the podcast before there was a podcast.
That's crazy that was 3 years ago, by the
I
way.
think it was because I think it was in
Yeah,
2020. It was so long ago. But I
that's wild.
feel like that's a good place to start to give context as to our relationship and full
Yeah.
transparency. You were one of the first, I think you were the first photographer who reached out to us during the
Mm,
build via Instagram. And it wasn't in a like, can I capture your space sort of way. It was just you
Mm-hmm,
started following us. Do you remember when you
mm-hmm.
found us? It feels like it was so early.
I don't remember. I mean, I got to imagine that it came from Pete because I assume you guys were working real close with him, and I'm a huge fan of his stuff, so I feel like I probably saw him post a story about you guys, and I was like, oh, Maine, epic. And then I don't remember. 3 years
That
seems
has
like
to be
way
it.
too long.
Because it was
Yeah,
very, very early in the process,
yeah,
and you started following us and reached out, and then we became friends, I think, like, pretty early on, and throughout the build, we talked a lot. Oh, I can
you hear
barely hear
that?
it.
Okay, all right, cool,
Apparently,
cool.
there's construction going on in the bathroom next to Ethan, and there's a saw, but I can barely hear it, so
All right,
I think you're
wonderful.
just
That
fine.
that's as loud as it'll get. So okay.
Yeah, so okay, so we met through Pete. Take it back there because Pete's, in my opinion, but I'm obviously biased, is kind of like the OG Instagram cabin.
Yeah.
And just, like, the most classic cabin I've ever seen.
Hmm.
How did you find his cabin? You were one of the first people to capture it too.
Yeah, I don't remember how I actually found his because that was a year prior. That was in the summer of 2019. I got to imagine that I saw his cabin probably on Cabin Love's page because I feel like they posted him multiple times, and I was just like, wow, that cabin is like the most beautiful, simple, glorious cabin I've ever seen. And
Okay,
then
what
yeah,
do
I
you
went up there.
let's talk about
I'll
his
go for it.
cabin for a second,
Okay.
because I do feel like there's this interesting piece to Instagram success if you're a cabin, and I have come to believe that the absolute core of it is the actual cabin and the cabin
Hmm.
design.
Hmm.
And there is something about Pete's cabin that does make you stop in your tracks when you're scrolling. What
Yeah.
is it though? I can't articulate it.
I don't know. It's because like it's not anything like it's not some like s- wildly designed treehouse. It doesn't have all these like smoke and mirror add-ons. Like it's
Nope.
just such a simple cabin. Like realistically, it's like the one room and then the loft.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, and it's like, it's a modest cabin. So I don't know what it is about it that just like stops you in its tracks other than just like the feeling that you get when you look at it. I mean, that's all I could possibly say. I mean, because even before I went there, I was like, this is arguably one of the most beautiful creations of a cabin I've ever seen.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I felt the
So,
same way when I saw it. Like I had been, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, I'm sure, but like I had been scrolling Instagram for inspiration for our cabin. And then I saw that one, and it wasn't like, I'm going to take this piece of it. It was like,
mhm,
no, no, this is it. in its
Hmm.
entirety. And that is just like a well-designed cabin. Because you're right, it doesn't
Yeah.
have like one of those hammocks built into the deck. It has like a freaking water cooler in it because it's off grid. So it's like the
Hmm.
kitchen is like so simple with like a water
Hmm.
cooler, which nowadays everyone's trying to like interior design the perfect cabin. Guilty. Like I'm not, there's no judgment there.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're upset about like red fire extinguishers, also guilty. And
I
that
oh
feels, go
I
ahead.
moved I moved the red fire extinguisher for some photos.
Because it's
It's
like,
just so bright. Yeah.
I know,
Like
I know.
you
And
gotta
so
have it.
we've thought about, you do have to have it and you have to have it in
Yeah.
plain sight, because if it's hidden,
Yeah.
every minute it takes them to find it is like more
Yeah.
damage to your cabin. But none of that impacts how you feel when you see his. I think part of
Yeah.
it's the windows.
Hmm.
Do you think that's
Hmm.
it?
Like the skylights in it and just like the whole like side of windows that just like looks out to, that marshy, woodsy
Yeah.
area. They're just the natural light in there. And like you don't even need lights until it gets dark
Yeah.
at all. It's
Yeah.
just,
That's how
yeah.
Cozy Rock is too, because he designed it
Hmm.
similarly. And you really
Hmm.
don't need the lights at all
Hmm.
until the sun goes down. For those who don't know who we're talking about Pete Long of the Raven House Cabin. You can find him on Instagram at ravenhouse.design, just so you can see what we're talking about. I'm guessing most of you, if you're listening to this podcast, have probably seen a photo of it before. It's like in all the books, it's been featured in magazines, it's on Instagram, it's everywhere. But it's hard to get an answer out of Pete, because I've asked him the same question, because we're working on another
Hmm.
design together now. And I
For you
keep,
guys or
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, very early stages. So we're not really
Hmm.
talking
Hmm.
about it like super publicly yet, because it's just very early. But we were talking about one of the things that makes me nervous about another build is the like relative success of Cozy Rock on Instagram, which has then led to a booked calendar. And it makes me a little anxious thinking about even trying to like replicate that or making any sort of plans based on that. So it makes me like very nervous. And he was talking about the marketing that we do. And I was like, Pete, I don't think it's that though. Like part of it is
Hmm.
sure
Hmm.
consistency, but I was like, I think it's the design. What is it, do you think, that does it? And Pete is so humble that he couldn't really articulate it either. So then I'm
I
like,
mean,
okay, what is it?
yeah. I mean, it's tough because like, I will say like your Instagram success and, alternatively your, cabin success, I do think obviously the cabin plays a crucial role in that. There's no denying that. Like it'd be foolish to say that it doesn't. But I do think in your specific case, you understand at least a little bit how like what your role on Instagram is, and you are a very like informative, transparent host and uh, creator, publisher on Instagram, whatever you would want to call it. And I think that that is something that Instagram is has been and is moving towards more so in terms of like visibility on it. I see this as like someone who, that's not my MO on Instagram. That's just not something that I've ever really done. It's something that obviously I think about and I'm just like, I don't know how to, transition into that. But I do think that like providing valuable information, being transparent, and just like being relatable, I think are three, huge components of success on Instagram. And I think you guys specifically do that really, really well.
That's so interesting, because actually one of the questions I was going to ask you was about, you put your face on Instagram way more than a lot of photographers. Most photographers, when you go to their feeds, it's almost all pictures of the cabins. And
Hmm.
yours are a little bit different, because Dirt and Glass do a good job of this too, but they're almost
Hmm.
characters in a story, right? Like
Hmm.
they're setting the scene, and it's really beautiful the way they do it. And honestly, I've tried to take photos of our cabin with Sean and I in it, and it is like, it just emphasizes to me how much work it takes to do that, because it does not come out that way. But
Yeah.
theirs is more like characters in a scene that they want you to like feel what it's like to be at that cabin. And yours is more like, I do feel like I'm following your life a little
Hmm.
bit, you know?
Hmm.
And it isn't necessarily on stories, though you have gotten better at that.
Hmm.
You show your face a lot more on stories now than you did when we first met. But you're in a lot of the pictures, and I feel like I'm following your life.
Hmm.
Do you find that that helps you build relationships with your followers, because they feel like they're kind of tagging along with you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Dirt and Glass, they are masters at their craft. They've been doing it longer than I have, and I've been doing it, a long time.
Yeah.
so they do such an incredible job at capturing those feelings and like really making it feel like they're in some sort of like, fairy tale story,
Yeah.
movie, something. Um, but yeah, I definitely feel like I, you know, have been able to kind of like foster these relationships with my followers just because I try and be personable on it. Um, because I mean, like that's what I want. Like I don't want to feel, I mean, I don't know. I definitely want to not feel like I'm so far removed from my followers. Like I don't want them to just be like a number. Like I,
Yeah.
try and talk to people. Like I try to respond to comments, DMs, everything. Um, because I'm just a person, I'm just like them, other than I take photos and post them
Yeah.
frequently. So I do think that like, showing your face, kind of like trying to talk more, and it's tough. It's something that I know that I need to like continue to like work on to do more because like there'll be times where like 2 weeks will go by and I'll be like, damn, like I haven't shown my face or done anything for 2 weeks, and it's just like I know that that's in my best interest to do that. So,
Yeah, but you posted something the other day that really resonated with me as someone who obviously spends a lot slash too much time on Instagram. And you said, like, I'm just gonna let go for a little bit. Like, I've been posting what I think people
mm,
want to see and what makes my grid look beautiful. And I
mhm,
tell me if I'm getting your words wrong, but you were like, I'm just gonna create for me for a little bit. And
mhm,
so this feels similar of like, maybe you haven't shown your face in 2 weeks, and who cares if that's the mood you're
yeah,
in or the stage of travels or whatever.
yeah. Yeah, I mean it's tough. Like I say that and then like and to be fair, I used to have an app like the preview app where I could like look at how my feed will look if I, moves, and since I posted that post, that was a couple weeks ago. I have not touched that app,
Mm,
which feels really nice, but like I still find myself being like, "Oh, like okay, I should post this one 'cause I think it would look better."
yeah.
Um and it's still just like you know, Instagram is to me lately has just been like not like a daily battle, but definitely just like it's tough. It's tougher right now for some reason for me. So, but I mean, I think it all ebbs and flows, and there's some weeks where it's like easy and I know what I want to post, and then there's
Yep.
some weeks that just aren't, and that's fine.
I totally feel the same way, which is why I feel like some of the work is just letting ourselves feel the permission to like be like, this is the
Hmm.
mood I'm in right now. And so Instagram is just going to reflect this, whether or not I'm
Hmm.
sharing that. But if I'm like a
Hmm.
little bit more absent, that's like just what
Yeah.
needs to happen in that moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever modeled before? Because I feel like in your photos, not only are you good at putting yourself in there, but you like know what to do in front of a camera.
So it's really funny you say that. No, first of all, no. I've never really modeled. I've, been in front of the camera more or less for as long as I've been behind it. Just like shooting with friends and stuff, and like I've never felt super comfortable with it. And like for a lot of the time, for a lot of the cabins, it's just me on a tripod. So like I could kind of just like, go stand in the distance and like not really be in front of it. So it like doesn't really matter what I look like. But then when I just took this international trip the past 6 months, when I was in Australia, I was working with Will Bear, the hat company, and um, my friend Lindsay, who actually runs Cabin Love. And those two people helped me feel more comfortable in front of a camera and just like helped like kind of like guide and like coach me through it. And like I was more or less like a model for like 10 days, 2 weeks. And that helped me so like more than I could even articulate. Like since then I've been, I mean, I'm still, don't get me wrong, like pretty uncomfortable in front of the camera. Like I still don't really know like what to do, but I definitely feel like I at least have a better understanding of it. And I think being a photographer also kind of helps that.
Because you know what looks
Um,
good in the final
y-
image too.
right, right. And I think, getting in front of the camera more also in turn helps me as a photographer as well, knowing, what I would want a model to do. So it's
Hmm.
like, it's been a real nice kind of switch up, kind of getting in front of the camera a little bit more. And it's definitely something that I actually kind of want to, continue doing. I've
So you're
met a
saying
lot of
you're pursuing a career in modeling.
definitely not what I'm saying.
Oh, that's
But
just what
no,
I heard.
yeah, no, it definitely, and I mean, like, you know, it, the posts that I post that's, just me in it tend to do pretty well. And so I think like people do enjoy seeing who actually, like you just said earlier, like I do think people enjoy kind of seeing something other than cabins or
Yeah.
landscapes. Like I think people really enjoy seeing like who's actually taking the photos,
Yeah,
you
but you're
know?
also like a unusually good-looking guy too, though. So I wonder. Okay, just for our listeners, I'm happily married. Ethan is way too young for me. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Do you think that helps, or do you think it's just having any human in front of the camera?
Um, I mean,
What
I
an
do.
awkward question for you to
I
answer.
know. I'm like, how do I
Okay, let me
answer
ask
that?
a different question. How often do
Okay.
people slide into your DMs?
Oh God. Um,
Hard-hitting journalism here, Ethan. We're giving the people what they want.
yeah. I mean, I would say that like, yeah, like there's a noticeable difference of like personal interaction, whether that be like more personal comments or like DMs when I post a photo of myself or like a video on TikTok that's like me and visibly me. And that ends up doing well. I would say there's definitely like a noticeable amount of interaction that doesn't happen on a cabin usually.
So people are sliding into your DMs. Have you ever dated someone from your DMs? Yes. That tells me that you have, and you're debating whether or not you're gonna tell us about it. Do it,
I'm I'm
Ethan.
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how to answer it. Well, to be fair, I've only really had one relationship in the past like 5 years, which started from Instagram. So
Okay, so the answer is yes. Did they slide into your DMs or vice versa?
no, we were in like the same kind of friend group. Like they were very much in like the outdoorsy kind of adventure group. So we had known of each other. Um, I I honestly think though that I slid in first because you know quotations for those who can't see because it wasn't like I like literally slid up be like hey like you know what's up. It was more of just like a I'm sure it was just like responding to like a story, and then
Yeah.
from there we just like we talked for like a long time before we had ever actually met. um
And
but
the first time you met in real life, was it just the 2 of you, or was it with a group for, like, some sort of travel trip?
it was just the two of us.
Wow. Was that
Yeah,
weird, or was it, like, immediately like? Because talking on Instagram is real conversations, so, like, you are
yeah.
getting to know someone.
Well, no, so it wasn't weird, and I don't think it was weird because like I, you know, at this point in my life, almost all of my friends, especially like all of my like good friends, have come from Instagram.
Yeah.
So like the amount of times that I've like gone and met up with a random person that I know off Instagram, like in the woods or at a cabin, like you know, that's how I meet people. You
Yeah.
know, like I don't go to bars, like I don't live in a city, I don't
And you're
go out and meet
traveling
people
all
at
the
the
time.
yeah. So I would say that like most of the people that I meet these days, you know, relationship-esque or just friendship-esque have come through Instagram at this point.
Yeah, which isn't that weird anymore these days. It's kind of like
No.
when online dating first came out, it was like, "Ooh, online dating." Decided
Yeah.
you had to decide whether or not to tell people. I'm, like, a lot older
Yeah.
than you, and so when I first used online dating, it was, like, early in the years of, like, Match.com. So I
Yeah.
remember when people would ask how you met, like, a couple of my first relationships, we would come up with stories because you didn't wanna
Oh,
tell
yeah,
anyone you met online, and now
for
it's like,
sure.
who hasn't met their partner
Yeah.
online? It's so much
Yeah.
more common. That's how
I
Instagram
mean,
feels.
for sure. I mean, it just makes sense too, because it's like, you know, you're, you know, at least on like a, you know, basic level, you're able to kind of see what someone's into, you know, their interest, hobbies, or whatever. And so it's a lot easier to kind of like be like, oh, well, this person likes X, Y, and Z. So, you know, those are three things that I very much enjoy. So, I mean, at least on like a basic interest level, you have, you know, some of those same interests.
And you can kind of, like, screen them to see if you think this might work. Are you still dating?
No,
Okay.
you're not.
I won't dig into that though. But folks, he's single
Oh God.
and he's open to DMs. So just
See,
keep
I
that in
knew that this is exactly where the conversation was going to go. I needed to get out there, so that's exactly why I wanted to hop on this podcast.
mind. Nobody knew, but this is actually
Mm.
a matchmaking podcast for Ethan. Tell us about your type. Who are you
Oh
looking
God.
for? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I won't throw you out there too much.
My cheeks
Okay.
are red.
Incentive to watch this on YouTube. You can see Ethan's bodily reactions to these very uncomfortable questions. Here's the reality, though, Ethan. Most of the friends that I've made in the cabin world are in their 30s and are all married or partnered. So we're just living vicariously through you. Your 6-month travels across the world. You're like meeting people on Instagram DMs. This is just fun for us to like watch your life and remember what it was like to be young, beautiful, and single. Okay, let's
Uh,
pivot. We'll pivot for a second. Okay, so you just went and you were traveling for 6 months. I have questions about this, and of course, I want you to tell me about the good parts, but weirdly, I'm actually more interested in the hard parts because I do think we see this a lot on social media these days, the, like, glamorized traveling lifestyle, but, like,
mhm.
what are the hard parts of being on the road? You were on the road for 6 months.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was crazy. Before that trip, I left in November, and before that trip, I had only ever left the US to go to Costa Rica.
Mhm.
Um, and
And that was for an extended time too. You were there at least a month, weren't you?
yeah, so I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Costa Rica. The first trip though was for like almost 3 months, like right before COVID. And and it's so funny because on this past trip, there was times where I was like thinking back on the time that I literally lived in Costa Rica, like went and lived with the host family that spoke no English, and then went and like volunteered at an animal shelter, just like stuff
Oh,
that like in my when I was I don't even know when it was, but it was like I was definitely having some like doubts of being like how the hell am I gonna like go travel the world? And I looked back on like 3 years ago, I did it, and it
yeah.
was just very interesting being like, obviously I've grown so much in like the 3 years. Like, why am I like anxious about something that I've more or less already done to an extent?
Well, but 6
Um,
months and all over the world is
it's different. It's
understandably
different.
a little anxiety inducing.
Yeah, yeah. Costa Rica is also like a very easy country to travel to. I think everyone speaks English for the most part. It's very Americanized, and everyone's just super friendly. But yeah, I mean, the trip was tough. I mean, there was times where like I didn't know, like I didn't really have much planned. I knew I was going to be in New Zealand for about like a month and a half-ish, and then after that I had like no plans.
But
And
you knew you were gonna
my,
go for 6 months, so you were, like, filling in gaps, or did the 6 months end up being just because you found places to go?
no, I was planning, well, originally it was going to be like a whole year long, but then my sister ended up, scheduling, planning out her wedding for May.
Right.
Um, so I had to come back for that, obviously. And so I just like kind of planned it from there. But then, so when I was in New Zealand, I connected with this old Volkswagen Combi van rental company, and we like worked together to like come up with this deal where I would get to go live in one of their vans for a month or for a week and go travel around and take some photos and videos for them. And then after that, I did have like stuff planned with Will and Bear and Cabin Love where we were kind of like cabin road trip in Australia for a little bit.
Ugh,
And then
the
yeah,
dream.
it was amazing. And I still have like barely edited any photos from this trip, which seems to be a reoccurring theme in my life, which I don't know how to work on, but
The backlog is
that's
real. Anyone who works in photo or
yeah,
video knows, and I'm actually a firm believer there's some people who are like, "I'm working towards no backlog," and I'm like, "If you're at no backlog, then, like, you don't have any business anymore." So, you
yeah,
have a healthy backlog, I think that's not a bad thing.
yeah. Like ridiculously healthy. Like my trip from 2021, where I road trip 3 months, I've touched like 20 of those photos. So
That's what
that,
always
yeah,
happens to the personal stuff, though, that ends up, like,
yeah,
way back of the line for everything else.
yeah. Um, but yeah, and then I got connected with this. It's this co-living house company that has houses throughout like Europe, and they had like one in Bali that they were just opening up, and they were doing like a creator house where they brought in like a bunch of creators like myself to live in the house for a couple weeks, create content for them. And so I was like, all right, Bali. Went to Bali
Oh
for
my
those
god.
3 4 weeks, and it was amazing. Like the villa was super nice. I met some really awesome people. One that I ended up seeing a couple months later on the trip, in his hometown. Um, and then once I was there, the co-founder of that company was also there in the house, and like we connected really well. And he was like, "Hey, like, this is going really well. Uh, we have a house, we have a apartment open in Barcelona. If you want to go do the same thing there." And I was like,
Oh my god.
yeah." So after that, I flew over to Barcelona and did that whole thing there. And so leaving. So New Zealand was very much planned out, and then like after it, I had no plans. I very much just like kind of kept it open, which you know kind of gave me some anxiety. I was like, I had no idea what I was gonna do, and then just like those couple of things just like kind of came, you know, rolling in just like back to back, and I was like, okay, like that's what happens when you kind of like don't try and force anything and you kind of just like leave it a little bit open. Um, and so yeah, it was beautiful how it like all kind of worked out, but definitely
Also,
real scary for a little bit.
yeah, but let's note one more thing here. It is kind of how it works out when you leave things open-ended, but it's also, and this is like a big life lesson I feel like I learned in my 30s, of like it's also what happens when you do good work. Do you know what I mean? Like you showed up
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just like I'm certain I know how you work, so I'm certain that you showed up and just like did good work for them and were enjoyable to be around. So they're like,
yeah,
okay, I have more work for you. And that I feel
yeah,
like is a good takeaway too. That part of it is like I left it open ended, and part of it is like you showed up and you create beautiful work, but you're also enjoyable to be around. So then people want to give you more opportunities.
yeah. I mean, definitely like those opportunities aren't just like something that would like present themselves to someone who, you know, is mean and awful and just like self-centered and whatnot, but like also like other opportunity, like obviously those opportunities presented themselves to me specifically because of, you know, who I am, like what I do, my background, but like in a broader sense, like, you know, if you're traveling like that and you kind of like leave things open, like you'll meet someone at a beach or something that's like, yeah, like I have a house like, you know, 500 meters away, like come have a barbecue. And then
Yeah.
that just like opens up like a whole nother stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about this a lot in terms of hosting, just because when I look at like it's not when I look at cabins that have five-star reviews, like all five-star reviews, it's not
Hmm.
always because they have an absolutely five-star perfect cabin. Like, things go wrong. It's usually how hard they try, how kind they are, how communicative they are, right? And these are, like, all things that we have control over. I just feel
Hmm.
like it's always a good reminder of, like, if you're operating with good intentions and doing the very best by the people you're working with, that's usually what opens up more opportunities, or in the case of
Yeah,
hosting, good reviews and
absolutely.
repeat guests and all of that stuff.
Hmm.
So, okay, so you
Yeah.
went to Barcelona. Where did you go after that?
Mhm. So that was like the pretty much end of my trip. I spent over a month there, a month, maybe a little over a month, and it was amazing. Like that was my first time kind of like really living in a city. It was my first time in Europe as well. So that whole experience of the culture there was real cool. I mean, it's just so different from any American city I've ever been in.
What was
Um,
for people who haven't spent any time in Europe or Barcelona, what was so different about it? Because I think we think of Europe as like similar to the US culturally.
you're like there's no crazy like grind mindset. Like
Mm,
everyone's just kind of there trying to enjoy their life, and I feel like that's a lot different than the US.
yeah.
Like it was it was a very interesting juxtaposition. Right after Barcelona, I mean, I stopped in Amsterdam for like 2 days to, you know, see my friend and fly back. But after
And,
that,
smoke some weed because it's totally legal and
I
yeah.
did. I went to Bulldog, the OG like weed coffee shop. And I bought and
Yes.
smoked a joint. And it was epic.
Okay, this is
Yeah,
so interesting. Can we just like pit stop and talk about this for 1 second? Because I've been
always.
always I've been thinking about this a lot recently because in Maine, weed is legal as well, and lots of other states
Mhm,
now, right? Like that whole
mhm,
culture is changing so quickly. And I said something to Sean how I wanted to create a highlight for our reel on our favorite spots to get weed, cannabis, whatever you want
mhm.
to call it, when you're in Maine, because that's like a real part of when we're there. That's like the
Mhm,
first thing we do is hit up our favorite
mhm,
dispensary and get our favorite stuff, right? And he goes, "Oh no, I
mhm.
don't think you should do that." And I was like, "Why?" And he goes, "Well, weed's kind of taboo." And I was like, "It's fully legal. What are you talking about?" He's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, but we're still not there yet." And I don't think
Ooh,
he's total I disagree with him on how I want it to be, but I don't think he's totally wrong because if you think about how many people you see sharing their favorite beers or breweries or talking about that stuff versus how many
yeah,
people sharing their favorite,
yeah.
flower or favorite dispensary or whatever, you don't see that. Do
But
you
why
notice
though?
that? Why?
Yes. Right. Like, I am, I am obviously a huge proponent of just like like the fact that alcohol, cigarettes too. The fact that those are so like high, I mean, cigarettes are not promoted anymore, but they were when they come out. Tobacco industry was huge with advertising, but now like alcohol, like if you watch TV or if you're driving on the highway or literally anything, like you
Mhm.
will see ads for alcohol. And that to me is so crazy because like, weed, there's never like been like a explicitly weed related death. Whereas
Right.
like alcohol, there's drunk driving, there's liver failure, like there's so many negative downsides physical, like
Yep.
let alone like any, trickle down effects of like alcoholism, addiction,
Right.
like all that. Like, so yeah, it
Doesn't make
it's
sense.
just it does not make sense
Name me one
at all.
health benefit of alcohol besides possibly red wine helping with like blood pressure or whatever it is. I can't name another one.
I can't,
But with
not at all.
weed, like my mom obviously died of cancer. And so at the end, like that was part of her treatment. And there was tons of
Mm-hmm.
research of like how it makes you feel better. Not only
Hmm.
makes you feel better and helps you feel less sick, but also there was some research at that time, very early, talking about how it could actually help in the fight against cancer. And so there's like
Hmm.
so many different health benefits of it. And yet Sean still thinks I shouldn't post about it on Instagram. But
Okay.
how do we destigmatize it if we don't
Yeah.
all start sharing
Yeah.
what our actual lived experiences look like? And there hasn't been a night at the cabin yet that I can think of where we weren't smoking weed.
Yeah. I
He's
mean,
gonna
it's
be
just
so
like,
mad I'm saying this all on the podcast.
um, I mean, it's so valid too. I mean, it would be one thing if you were in New Hampshire, which is the only state in the Northeast that is not legalized weed, which is ridiculous. But that's
Especially live
neither
free or
here nor there.
die. Come on, New
Yeah,
Hampshire.
I know, so much beef with that, but yeah, and then especially Maine. Maine. It was Maine, Washington, Oregon, California,
Yeah,
Colorado. Like I
one
feel
of the
like those were
first.
like the first.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, obviously, sure, Kevin, do whatever you want. I would, you know, say that it wouldn't. I don't think it would hurt you to put it right next to the breweries, because but that again, that's just me.
Which
That's
we
like
did
to
in our
me.
guest book. Did you see that when you were there last week?
Did you? No, I
We
did
have a
not.
whole
So you
page.
did do it. Okay.
Yeah, in the guest book, because that felt
Yeah.
like you're in a legal state, and I think at the very top I said, like, "In case you didn't know, it's totally legal in Maine," though some counties are still only medicinal, but, we directed them towards because Freeport will probably be the
Mm-hmm.
last one to allow recreational,
Mm-hmm.
purchases, so we
Mm-hmm.
sent them to, like, Brunswick and
Mm-hmm.
Portland and all of our favorite places, so it's in the guest book, he just didn't want it on Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, that that makes sense. That makes more sense. I can definitely kind of see where he's coming from on that one, just because like Instagram's Instagram. It's a little different. Like I feel like you could possibly run the risk of getting into some trouble if like someone reported it, but like
But it's
I don't think
legal, what
so.
would they
Oh
report?
yeah. I don't know. And also there's tons of dispensaries that also just like have their own, I'm
Instagrams,
actually
yeah.
working with a grow operation in Maine, actually in
Which
Portland.
one?
Garden of Gela.
Okay.
They don't have like a storefront, but they're a grow operation and they sell to, when I was in high school, obviously it was not legal. I had to
Mhm.
go meet someone in a parking lot, some sketchy, shady parking lot at night to, buy my weed. And now it's like I'm working with a
That's
weed company.
awesome.
Like that's just, yeah, it's really cool.
And
Yeah.
it just goes to show because I like thinking too about the entrepreneurial side of weed because especially in North Carolina, it's not legal yet. So there's so much opportunity when it does
Mm-hmm.
become legal. Who's
Hmm.
like laying the groundwork now that when it's legal, you can just jump on it and like start selling? Because Virginia, it's legal, but they're not selling yet, is my understanding. I think it's
Hmm.
2024 till they can sell. So
Hmm.
Danville, Virginia is right across the border of North Carolina. And I'm like, if someone is not planning to
To
build a dispensary right there. Like there's got to be people thinking about it. And then of course the cops
Yeah,
are going to be right across the border right there ready to like find ways to pull people over. But
which is ridiculous. And slightly pivoting again, like that's probably one of the bigger problems I have with the whole legalization of cannabis is that there are still people incarcerated for possession of a plant.
Ethan, I literally have a sticker on my laptop that says no one should be in jail for weed. I'm totally
Yeah,
with you. That is the part
yeah,
that makes me so angry.
yeah. It's frustrating and absolutely ridiculous that like as soon as it was legalized, they weren't all, you know, free. Like
They all
yeah,
should have been let out of jail. Like the
yeah,
resources that we could save by like victimless crimes, get them out of jail. Like what are we doing? Okay, this is turning into a political podcast, but
yeah.
I am here for it.
I think we've talked about cabins for all of 5 minutes. We've hit my dating life, we've hit weed.
I mean, I kind of saw this coming, but,
Yeah.
Okay, how do you make it work as a full-time job traveling this much? Is it just finding different gigs with folks as you go?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I'm not gonna lie. Like last year was a crazy busy year for me. I pretty much worked every single day, and I think I'm still kind of fighting off a little bit of burnout that
Yeah.
I experienced last year, and then just with like the travel and so kind of trying to find a balance with that is incredibly tough because and then we were actually talking about this yesterday about being at a cabin and wanting to enjoy it, but then like sitting by a fire enjoying it, be like, I should probably take some
Mhm.
photos of this.
Mhm.
So that's a battle that's just so mentally draining, and it's one that like is just always there. Like it does not go away.
And I will be honest, I don't think cabin owners realize that. It's kind of like I've worked in the wedding industry for like 12 years, and I kind of hope none of my clients are listening to this. I don't think they would be. But the biggest misunderstanding is they're all like, "Aren't you having so much fun? Like, you're at my
Hmm.
wedding." Like, everyone thinks that it's just inherently fun because it's a wedding, and it is.
Yeah,
And I love parts of that job, but also it's work. I'm there for 8 hours. I'm
yeah,
not staying an extra
yeah,
half hour because your reception is so fun. Like, I'm leaving because
yeah,
I need to get sleep and import all the footage and do all this. Anyway, as
yeah,
a cabin owner, I think at the beginning, I was like, "Oh, they're coming, but, like, they also get to enjoy the cabin. What a treat." And
yeah.
then a couple weeks ago, I captured my first cabin and very much felt that tension of
Hmm.
I should be photographing absolutely everything we do every second that I'm here because I'm being gifted a free stay, which I do not
Hmm.
take that for granted as a cabin owner. And also, I'm not being paid, so the enjoyment of being there is the only compensation for doing the work, so you should also get to enjoy it a little bit. But how do you turn that off in your brain? It just I will never think about hosting photographers the same way again because that struggle, that tension is so
Hmm.
present. Have you figured that out? Any parts of it?
No.
No.
Um, I mean, well, okay, no, that's a lie. A little bit. So, for me, like as a photographer, like and obviously you know this, like best lighting is like right before
Mhm.
sunrise, sunrise, right after, and then the same thing for sunset. And so, that's obviously very specifically only we'll say 4 hours out of the 16 hours that you'll get for daylight. So I spend, midday when the lighting is just, especially if it's sunny. If it's cloudy, then like I'll shoot like all the interiors midday because like that's really soft light. Like that's like almost the ideal
Yeah.
lighting to shoot interiors.
Most people don't
But if it's
understand that. They're like, "Clouds.
I
Oh, I
know,
hope it's sunny." And you're like, "No."
yeah, yeah. Most ideal situation is a crazy sunrise, cloudy during the day, sunset.
Yeah.
Um, Rarely ever happens like that though. But that's why like 2 day stays are nice because you have at least two sunsets and two sunrises, or like the possibilities of them. But like, midday, I'll spend, you know, kind of chilling a little bit because it's like, I'm not gonna take that many photos. Like there's obviously like I'll like walk around and like experience and like go out and like try and like actually get the experience of like what, people who are staying there would feel, to kind of like help with that. But usually like midday is a little bit more lax, but like usually like early hours and evening hours, it is like evening hours are tough too, because it's like sunset typically like kind of falls right in line with like the time that I'd
Dinner?
be eating. So it's like,
Yep.
yeah. So it's like you almost every single time I'm at a cabin, I'm usually like not eating dinner till like 10 p.m., especially in the summer when sunsets are so late.
Yes. Yeah. And in the
Um,
morning, you have to get up so early too that it's not like you're
mhm.
sleeping in and actually enjoying that part of the cabin either. You're getting up
Cabin stays are
first thing.
exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah. I do
Yeah.
not feel like I think this is interesting to talk about because I do not think cabin owners realize this. And I only say that because I definitely didn't realize it. And I do
Yeah.
this for my real life. But it is different with the cabin stay. It
Yeah.
does sound exhausting. I could not do
Yeah.
it very often. After that one, which I love the house, I love the owner, like had a good time. But I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I would do this again or very
Yeah.
rarely.
Yeah. I mean, and so I'm actually like, you know, it's like last year and like all the years that I've been doing photography prior, like we're very cabin oriented, cabin heavy. And I think this summer I'm trying to, tone it back just a little bit. Um, like next month I have, I say tone it back, but like next month I think I have like 4 or 5, maybe 6 cabin stays,
In a month.
um,
Okay, that's
in a
that's
month.
a lot.
Yeah, I know. And that's not even on top of like I'm working with the West Virginia Tourism Department, next week, yeah, which is really cool.
That
Um,
is cool. I like West Virginia.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's a new national park there. I don't know
What
if
is
you
it
knew
called?
that.
I didn't.
New River Gorge National
Oh,
Park.
okay. I mean, I know
Yeah,
of the New River Gorge. I didn't know they just turned it into a national park.
they did. They just did. So it's the U.S.'s newest national park, and I get to go show it off, which is really
That's
exciting.
awesome. You'll be
Yeah,
very good at that. I feel like your portfolio sets you up well for jobs like that.
yeah. I mean, tourism. This will be my third tourism shoot, and like I love tourism shoots. They're a
Yeah.
lot of fun. Yeah. Um, but yeah, and then like July, like I think I only have like one or two cabins, and then like probably same for August. It'll probably be a little more chill. Just I just want to do like a little bit more brand work, kind of like because I feel like I did almost pigeonhole myself a little bit with the cabins.
Yeah. You're not
Um,
just a cabin photographer.
I'm not just a cabin
You're
photographer. I
not
want
even
people to
just a
like,
photographer. You do video
yeah,
too.
yeah, and I'm a model.
That's right. God, you can be behind the camera, front of the camera, you can do it all. But for the tourism
Uh,
ones, though, I bet that is an added bonus that you are comfortable in
yeah.
front of the camera, you know how to do
Hmm.
it. I
Hmm.
mean, then they have humans in it. And you also have a group
Yeah.
of friends that you travel with. And so for a tourism thing, if
Hmm.
they like you're not constantly sourcing models, you have
Yeah.
people and that adds the social element for you too, I would
Yeah.
bet.
Like I'm actually flying out a buddy from Washington to come help with the West Virginia shoot, actually, which is the first time I've ever flown someone out to like help me with the shoot.
Yeah.
Kind of
But you can
crazy.
build
Like
that into the budget too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I did,
Yeah.
um, which is cool. But yeah, I'm actually like I don't ever want to shoot a cabin solo again. I don't think.
Yeah.
And
That's so
I think
funny.
like
My
it's
takeaway was I only wanna do it solo because I invited
really
friends, yeah, because
yeah.
I was like, "That'll be the enjoyment piece of this."
Okay, yeah.
And when they were there, it's just stuff goes everywhere, so it's like either I'm trying to photograph and, like, moving everyone's stuff or telling that like, they
Hmm.
don't feel like they can really move in, and I was just like, "If I were alone, I could manage all my stuff, and I think I could really enjoy this and photograph it well, but with
Right,
other people there, it
right.
made it a lot harder."
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I will do some just like inevitably because my friends are all over. Like, I don't really have that many friends. Like, I don't have a group that I travel with. It would be cool, but yeah. So I'm sure there'll be a couple cabins that I do shoot solo this summer, and like I do still enjoy that because like on one hand, like I'm not as able to, I'm not, oh my goodness, I'm not able to get as creative as I want to when it's just me because I can't get like different angles with a model. But like
Yeah.
on the other hand, I'm able to be almost a little bit more creative because like it's just me. Like there's no, having to like think about other people. There's no
Yep.
other, yeah. So
That's how
it's
I feel.
yeah,
When it's just me at the
yeah.
cabin, I feel like I'm able to be more creative. If there's other people there, I feel
Hmm.
like I'm hosting, like I want to take care of everyone. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable by asking them to move their things. So it just like
Yeah,
feels harder for me with other people.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I am going to ask the one question that I feel like everyone probably wants to hear the answer to because you have this rare bird's eye view. Like those of us who own cabins actually stay in cabins other than our own very rarely, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
do when I'm
yeah.
traveling, I look for a cabin to stay in, but we spend so much of our travel time going to our own cabins that I don't get to see a lot. And on a recent episode, someone was talking about the magic of a cabin. And if you really want your rental to stand out, there needs to be some element of magic. We've
Hmm.
talked about this on several of the last ones. And I just feel like you would have a good perspective on this because you've seen so many.
Hmm.
What have you seen in terms of like the cabins that really bring the magic and what is it? Is it usually the surroundings? Is it owner related stuff? Like, how do people do this? What stands out to you?
Um, oh, loaded question, and I don't think that there's any like just one overarching answer. I think there's multiple different things. Like I think back on like some of my favorite cabins, and some of them are the location of them. Like I stayed in an A-frame that's right outside Zion National Park.
Mhm.
Like that spot's epic because I mean, granted, it's a cool little like A-frame that has like a retractable roof thing, but it's also like right outside Zion National Park.
Yeah.
Like you throw Cozy Rock there, and like again, crazy experience just because it's like you're looking at like the red
Yeah.
rocks of Zion.
What was
So
that called? Do you remember?
yeah, Zion Eco Cabins is
Okay.
their Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking to go out
Um,
there. I think someone shared that one with me before. It is really
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, they're pretty well known. I don't want to take all of the credit, but I stayed with them on my first road trip out west with Glamping Hub actually back in 2019, back when they only had one A-frame. And so, and they were Airbnb's most liked photo on their page was
Wow.
my photo, which
Good
was cool in
work.
2022.
So
Yeah, thank
basically,
you.
you are the reason for their success. Okay.
No, 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 no,
For the
no,
marketing,
no.
marketing success.
I would say that I was able to, with my photography, like give them the attention that they deserved.
Oh, it's
How's
really
that?
nicely put. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, so I definitely do think like location is a big thing. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of any places that I've stayed that have blown me away that there's like neighbors that you can like see and hear from your cabin. And I
Yeah.
don't think I can think of any. Um,
Interesting.
yeah. I mean, but that's just me. Like I like my solitude, so some people might
Yeah.
not have like a problem with that. Um, but I think a lot of the people who are going to like these cabins kind of like want to get out of a city or like the suburbs and like not have neighbors.
Yep.
Um, and then I think personal touches for me is a huge thing. Um, I mean, obviously, I've stayed in so many Airbnbs, some that I'm shooting, and then some that I'm just like staying because I'm, going to see a concert or something like that. And the ones that make you feel like you're not just another check for them or another just number on their bookings for the month, the ones that, leave you a card, like a handwritten note or like a welcome package, like anything like that, I think completely elevates the Airbnb.
Yeah. Because it reminds
And
you
it,
why you're doing Airbnb versus a hotel. Who wouldn't do
right,
that?
right, right. Like hotels, like if you just want to feel like you're, another guest amongst 100, then yeah, go to a hotel. But like I have stayed in Airbnbs where it's like it doesn't feel like there's any personal integration at all. It just feels like, check in, check out.
Yeah,
So I do think that that one, for me, again, personally, is a big thing. Um,
that makes sense.
and, and
Also,
also just like, yeah, go for it.
it's also a tough balance too, because you don't want people I always struggle with this of, like, I want people to feel really welcomed, and I also
Mhm,
kind of want them to feel like it's their cabin while they're there. And if
mhm,
there's too much
mhm.
there, like, telling them like, too much of my presence there, I worry
Yeah.
sometimes, will it make it feel like, "Oh, isn't it nice that I'm letting you stay in my cabin?" Instead of
Mm,
like, "No, no, you've paid for it. This is your cabin for that
yeah.
however long that stay is."
Yeah. That's a really good point. Um, yeah.
But you
I
can't
mean,
go
I'm
wrong with
sure
a handwritten note and a welcome gift, that's for sure.
definitely not. Definitely not. I do think that that's like, yeah, it's very special. And I think that could like ma- not like make or break an experience, but definitely like, if you were to send, two couples to the same two Airbnbs and same, like pretty much same cabin, like as close as you can get, and one of them had like a welcome note with like a bottle of wine or snacks or anything, and then the other one with just like check-in info. I'm sure like if you were like survey them, it'd be a very noticeable difference of
Yeah.
like which one they felt more welcomed at, which
Mhm.
one felt more homey.
Yep.
Um, and then yeah, and I think the other one would just be like, obviously like uniqueness of design, whether interior or exterior is important. Obviously that's a little bit more difficult to do than just a handwritten note.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough to, create this like super unique design if like it just isn't going to work, you know. Um, but
Which is the
yeah,
advantage of building. I do think when
for
you
sure.
build, you have so much control over everything, and I've had a lot harder time making my very first cabin have that distinct feel because it's like the
Hmm.
green tile in the bathroom, it's everywhere, and it's like, do I
Hmm.
wanna drop, like, 10 to 20K to, like, retile
Right,
everything?
right.
But I think it can be done. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of examples. I've certainly followed I mean, the Hillside House is a good example of one. Now, Lauren's an interior designer, but they did, like
Hmm.
and they did, like, a full reno, but they did it with a
Hmm.
condo too, the Profile Place, and both of those, I think she did a really good job of taking existing places and really elevating it through just interior design. And obviously her husband and her father-in-law, I think, is the one who helped, did a lot of, like, renovation stuff, but she made all the choices in terms of sourcing stuff. And you can check them out on Instagram, but you'll see images. That is a good example of how design can really make a place stand out.
Yeah, I mean, design plays such a huge factor, especially if you don't have, like, if you bought something or if you had something and you're not able to tear it down, like build something new. I think like interior design is where you can, really make a difference. Like I've stayed in a lot of Airbnbs that kind of have the same sort of look to them. And like they're cozy, but like again, I think if you're able, like I think you guys do a really good job of it, of having something like your interior design is like impeccable. And it
Shout out
also,
to Jordan Fairchild. You
yeah,
can also
and
find
it
her on
also,
Instagram.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you even made some changes within, like, the year and a half that I went there last time, and, like, they were super subtle, but, like, I'm pretty sure there was a new painting above the couch. I'm
No, same
pretty
painting.
sure.
But
Are
there's
you
a
sure?
new piece of artwork. It's the same one, Sarah Madeira Day. I'm never gonna change that one because we literally designed well,
Mm,
that came second. We picked the rocker first and then that painting. But there is a new
mm,
one in the stairwell by her and a new one in the
okay,
entryway by her, I think, since the last
okay.
time you were there. And then that
And you
new
guys
fiber
added
art.
yeah, and you guys added the wood in the loft, right?
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
new? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Like, that's
That
really
adds
I
nice
love the wood.
texture up there, didn't it?
I
I
think that was a
know.
great decision. Like, the
Yes.
film photos that I took up there, I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah,
Mm,
I'll take credit for that one.
yeah,
I mean, Sean made it
yeah.
obviously, but I was the creative behind that.
Mhm, mhm. No, I think yeah. But yeah, again, just like something like that's super unique. I don't know if I've ever seen that in the interior of a house before. I think that that's just something that like, and I mean, obviously you guys have like such a special cabin as it is, but like again, that's just a small. I mean, not super small, but like that's a detail that I think just continues to elevate you above the rest.
Yeah. Well, thanks for those kind words. Shout out to Pete, though, who designed the cabin. I always think that that's the biggest thing. It's just like the windows and the overall way the space flows. It's like, again,
Hmm.
hard to describe, but really does the majority of the work there. Okay.
Yeah.
We've added a new ending to the podcast with some hot topics in the cabin world that
Mm,
I'd like to get your take on. I specifically selected the ones that you've seen lots of cabins, so I think you'll have a good perspective on this.
okay.
Let's start with actually, I'm gonna start with this one because we haven't asked anyone, and I feel like, especially after your recent New Zealand adventures, van life. Do you
Mm.
think this is a trend or do you think it's here to stay?
Well, I mean, I would say that van life has probably been maybe not trendy, but has been like at least in the realm of trending before the whole cabin culture was.
Yeah. The dirtbag
I would,
culture, like back in
yeah,
you know, back in the
yeah, like
climbing days was all van life.
yeah, and I mean, at least for me, I would say that I discovered like van. I think I wanted to live the van life before I had ever wanted to like do this whole cabin thing. Um, so and with that fact alone, I would say that it's here to stay, and also with the fact that like it's very difficult. Like obviously, vans are pretty expensive these days, but like not nearly as expensive as like trying to buy like a
Yeah.
two-bedroom house, three-bedroom house. Um, so I do think it'll be here to stay, at least for like a little while. I mean, I can't see why it wouldn't, just because, you know, I mean, it is fun. I've lived the SUV life, which is like, similar, smaller.
Yeah.
Um,
Yours is a lot smaller.
yeah, I actually just bought a new 4Runner, so I've upgraded a little bit.
Oh, you got rid of the
Yeah,
Subaru.
Volkswagen.
You didn't have a Subaru?
I did not have a Subaru. You have a Subaru.
Well, obviously I have one. But all these years when you were living in the back of your hatchback, I was certain that was a Subaru.
Volkswagen.
Oh, I'm judging you a
Yeah,
little bit. Although Sean, the former
valid.
mechanic, loves the Volkswagen hatchback and
Yeah,
hates Subarus. It's like the biggest fight we
really
have. Yeah, he hates them.
interesting. Well, now I have a Toyota, so
Okay. You have more space.
um,
You've upgraded.
so much more space. Like it feels like I bought like a bus, to be completely honest. Like it's so
Wow.
massive.
What a treat.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited. Um, but yeah, no, I think van life and like van life isn't just a US thing. Like it's in Europe. It's in I lived in
Yeah.
a van in New Zealand and in Australia. Granted, those were for short amount of time, but I do think that it's not just a trend. I think it very much blew up with like the whole Instagram influencer whatever. Um, but I think it'll be here to stay because I think it's been here for long enough that like, I mean, shit, it's been here since like the 60s.
Yeah.
People
Probably
falling
even
around like the
before
dead.
then, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just think people, I think there will always be nomads. I think there will always be people who don't want to live in a house just yet. I think they'll want to live in a van. I mean, it's not a permanent situation at all.
Yeah.
Um, like, most people who live in vans obviously end up buying a house at some point, but I do think it's like a really cool way to experience a lot without owning a home.
Yeah. Okay,
So,
this is great to hear because Sean and I really have a dream of him building a van out for us because he used to be a mechanic and he
Hmm.
also is a carpenter and like can do everything himself and could do it at
Hmm.
our house versus having to travel to Maine where
Hmm.
we like only have small pockets of time, and then we could use
Hmm.
it to travel to the cabins and then potentially rent it, because I do like the idea of renting, not
Hmm.
even so much about the money but just as like, again, not everyone can afford to build a cabin, not everyone can afford to like buy a van
Hmm.
or want to for more than a week at a time. And so then that
Right.
sharing
Right.
economy to me just makes sense for like limited resources, limited finances, like all of that. Let's just share these things if we can.
Yeah.
But my financial planner, when I told him that was the next investment I wanted to save for, was like, isn't that kind of trendy? And then I was like,
Mm.
oh, I started second guessing myself. So that's why I added it to this list. Thank you for
I
that
mean,
answer.
I know people who, bought like an empty Sprinter van, built it out, like completely renovated it, lived in it for like a year or two, and then sold it for either more than or the exact same amount that they spent on it, which, when you think about it, is they lived for free for 2 years.
Yeah.
Like it makes sense,
Yeah.
like,
Totally.
yeah. So,
And then someone else
yeah,
gets to benefit from it and do the same thing without having to put in all the work if they don't necessarily have those skills or the desire to
right,
do that.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like smart because it is such a life, like what you were saying, it is such a life phase thing. Like it is not a
Hmm.
forever thing. You're not going to buy a van and this is where you live forever. And so figuring
Right,
out a way to share it, whether it's just passing it on by selling it or renting it or whatever, it just seems to
right.
make sense for that particular lifestyle.
Or like, you could always just like, make it like if it breaks down or something and it's like beyond repair or like something happens, you just like, okay, put it on a piece of land, rent it out on Airbnb,
Yeah.
like spruce it up, add like a little like, you know, a dipping pool or a hot tub or
Yeah.
something, make it like a whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Find a
There's
great
a lot of
location.
options.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for our next land, I wanna get a bigger piece of land so we have more options. Because 'cause I'd love for us to try and build, like, a small A-frame on, like,
Hmm. Hmm.
on our own when we're up there, but when we live so eventually we'll move there, but when we live so far away, it's just hard for us to build on
It's
our
hard.
own because
Yeah.
we're not up there enough. So, if
Yeah.
there's enough land, then you can just throw the van there. People can pick it
Exactly.
up and drive it when it stops working. You could just leave it
Hmm.
there. Yeah, okay. The plans are all coming together. Okay, checkout procedures. You've seen a lot of these. What is your take on
Hmm.
the whole checkout procedure thing? Hosts and travelers tend to have very
Yeah,
differing feelings about
definitely.
this.
So, yeah, this is definitely a hot ticket item because like there's been times where I've like stayed in Airbnbs with people and they're like, "What are you doing?" Because like me, I almost always will, without even looking at the checkout thing, strip the beds, clean the dishes, like whatever, just like basic things. Like second nature to me at this point because it's just like, I don't know, like I'm a clean, tidy person. Like I'm trying to make, the cleaner's job easier. And, the argument from guest point of view is, well, that's what we're doing the cleaning fee for, is it not? And which I get, but like you're not cleaning. Like stripping the sheets off the bed is not cleaning. Like cleaning is sanitizing and scrubbing and like actually cleaning. Like you're just tidying up after yourself. Like you're not cleaning. Like if you don't want to do anything, again, go stay in a hotel where you could leave it a mess. Um, but there's also been times where like I've stayed at an Airbnb not for work and I, maybe didn't strip the beds or like didn't, but like I always leave it pretty clean.
Yeah.
Like so, I don't know. I think people are kind of lazy sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that they are thinking that, oh, we're going on vacation and we don't have to like clean up. Um, or, oh, we're paying the cleaning fee, so we shouldn't have to clean up. But I don't know. A cleaning fee of like $50 is not that much.
Yeah.
And like, so I don't know. I'm very much on like the side of just do the bare minimum. I mean, just like it takes maybe 15 seconds to strip the beds.
Right. That's how I
It's
feel is
just,
like our list looks long. It has like 10
yeah,
things on it, but
yeah,
they're all like real quick. Like check and make sure the
yeah.
windows are closed. Put your
Turn
towels
off the
in the
lights.
bathroom. Yeah, I don't even
Yeah,
think I have turned off the lights on mine, like, cause ours are
yeah.
all same day flips with new guests coming in, so I'm like, "Well, the cleaner's gonna need them or turn them off anyway." But it's all
Right.
little stuff of just, like, reminders, but it does look long. Anyway, helpful perspective from someone who's seen a lot
Yeah,
of them. Okay, last one.
yeah.
Um, influencers and user generated content is the new
Hmm.
hot thing for a lot of cabin hosts. I just got a DM this morning. We get them all the time, people pitching themselves. And we also, as owners, probably all have at least one story where we feel like, that didn't go quite as I had hoped. What do
Mm-hmm.
you recommend being on the other side? How do hosts protect themselves for that? What should we be looking out for in terms of quality? How do we know that we're going to get something good that is worth it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely another, hot ticket item because like I don't know what happened at the end of last year or the beginning of this year, but I feel like all of a sudden I just started seeing so many people doing like UGC at cabins and just like a whole lot of, smaller creators starting to like do this, which is I think good for hosts, not so much good for the creators. Because I mean, it's just like the saturation in the market. But again, I mean, it sounds like, you may have had like an experience or two that, or at least know of some people who maybe didn't have the greatest experience. And I think that that is one con that will come with more people doing this. Because like, for a while it was Dirt and Glass, me, Levi Kelly, like people who had been doing it
Mhm.
and, obviously have like a paper trail of past clients and like past success and very visibly shown on our pages, whereas like I feel like with some influencers who maybe just have like 500,000 followers but aren't really in like the cabin niche,
Mhm.
you know they'll come up and be like, hey, like we'll post you on our page or on our story, and like when they do, it's just like a model in your hot tub with like the
Yes.
cabin way
Yes.
in the back.
This
Yeah.
is my biggest fear about UGC is like I don't need like bikini models in my
Yeah.
photos, Like
Yeah.
that's not the kind of marketing I'm trying to do.
Yeah, right. Because like, I mean, what's the ROI on that? Like, how many of their followers are being like, "Huh, that cabin that's blurred out in the background looks really nice. I'm gonna go check that out."
Yeah. Now I will say
Um,
Pete Curiel, who's come to ours, his
yes,
girlfriend, he'll take
yes,
pictures of her in the hot tub, but they're
yep,
so tasteful and tactful.
hmm
It's showing off the experience. It's often like the
hmm
back of her head. It's not about exploitation at all. It's very much
right,
about just showing off the experience. So I don't think
right,
I think there's ways to do that, but
definitely. I mean, there's people like my buddy Chadwick. He brings his partner Cassidy along all the time, and he takes beautiful photos of like her. Same thing, like she's blurred out, but her head like frames the
yep.
cabin. So my best advice for cabin owners and hosts would be to just do some due diligence. Don't just go based off numbers. Like, don't pick this person because they have 500,000 followers without looking at their profile and seeing it's just them modeling
Yeah.
clothes. Like, that's not going to help you. Like, yeah,
It's
you
not gonna
might see like a
translate.
right, like you might see like a small tick in engagement for that day, the one day that they post you, but I would say you're well, I mean, I guess it kind of depends what you're looking for. Like, if you're looking for like good content, I would look for people whose content you like and kind of go that route. Because, like, if you hire someone because you like their content, you're more than likely not going to be disappointed in it.
Yeah.
But if you hire someone based off expectations of how well you'll get a return on their posting and promoting, that leads to a little bit of disappointment, I think, sometimes.
Because it's just a gamble. You just don't know.
Just a gamble. I mean, even, I don't think my post with my film photos did that well of Cozy Rock. Like, my Instagram's been pretty hit or miss lately.
But also, who ca
Um,
from my perspective, I don't care because
right,
you're a good
right,
creator. I wasn't having you come for that necessarily. I just needed more
right,
content, right? And, like,
right.
so I think that's how I think about it too, is like, what am I hoping to get out of this one? Is it
Hmm.
exposure? Is it and for
Hmm.
me, at this point, my number one priority is always just good content because I'm not
Hmm.
there, so I can't get it on my own.
Hmm.
And I've been most disappointed by exposure in the past. If I hired someone thinking that the outcome was gonna be exposure, and
Hmm.
then you just don't and it might not be, but if I get good content, then I don't care. It's fine.
Yeah. And I think that's, more oftentimes than not, good content will always reign supreme. Um, I
Agreed.
think in terms of, yeah, I think exposure is really hard with Instagram because I think, across the board, it's been hit or miss for a lot of creators. So like obviously like me during class like we still like try and you know sell our promotion and sometimes it just like doesn't hit. And, like, trust me, we feel awful if
Mm,
like we have a sponsored post or like we're promoting the cabin and it just like doesn't do well. Like we feel bad because like we know what our posts are capable of. Like you guys know what our posts are capable of. So like when it doesn't hit that mark, it definitely sucks.
yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
at least you're delivering like great content 100% of the
Right.
time. So
Right.
you're
Right.
still left with that. Okay,
Yeah.
last one. I thought that was the last one. But I do have to ask you, what do you think makes a cabin a cabin?
Ooh, yeah. I saw your little series about cabin versus house.
Yeah.
Um, it's that's
You've
tough
seen a lot
because
of
I mean
them. And like
I know.
A-frames, are they all cabins? Tree houses, are they cabins? Are they
Yeah.
automatically a cabin? How do you
See,
think about this?
I struggled with your series. Like I was looking at them, I was like, I don't know. Because for me, obviously I think there's a very like you if you look at a house and it's a house, like I think it's like very easy to like see that. But there's obviously some that like, straddle that line. But I think more than anything, it kind of comes down to the feeling of it, which is obviously something hard to describe while like looking at pictures, but you know, like I don't know. I don't think anything too modern can really be considered a cabin.
Hmm.
Like I don't. I'm trying to like. I can't even think of any off like the top of my head. But anything that's like only white and black, I don't think that that's a cabin. I think it
Mm,
has to have some sort of like wooded interior or wood
mhm,
accents or
mhm.
wood siding. Um,
It's so tricky too, because when you're building
yeah.
new, that was my biggest complaint during our build was like, "Ooh, all this drywall," hence the tree cookie walls. Because I was like, "We need
Mm-hmm.
more wood on the
Mm-hmm.
inside."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like definitely that. Wood stoves help. I think if it's something that has a wood stove in it,
Yes.
it can almost be considered a cabin. But
Yeah.
uh, I don't know.
Although I will
It's
say
like
my house has every house I've ever lived
yeah,
in, first thing I did was
yeah,
install a wood stove, and I wouldn't consider any of them cabins, but it
yeah.
definitely I do think a cabin has to have one, or propane. I think
Hmm.
it can be gas if that, like, works
Sure.
better, but
Yeah, yeah.
still.
Wood stoves are tricky. I mean, there's especially like if you live, especially like if you like, there's so many variables with wood stoves. Like city folk, I feel like come up to stay in cabins a lot, and they don't know how to really start
Mhm.
fires a lot of the time. Um,
Those
and
city folk.
and so I feel like you either really need to have like very explicit instructions and very dry wood for them, or else
Yep.
it's just not gonna go well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and make sure the fire extinguisher is right there.
In red.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
maybe a video in your Instagram profile, there's, like, fire
Yeah.
starters to make it easier, all the
Yeah.
things.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
Ethan, what a treat. Folks, he's single. Slide into his DMs if you liked what you heard. He's
Oh
volunteered at an
my God.
animal refuge. Like, what's not to like? Thank you for taking the time to chat with me again. And this is maybe our like fourth or fifth time on Zoom, maybe even more than that. But I feel like you're
I
like a
know.
Zoom regular now.
Yeah. I feel like this is our first one of the year though, which is a shame because it's already May.
I know. How is that true?
I don't know. It's
What a
crazy.
weird year. It's because we had a top secret project we were working on, and then I started a podcast, and suddenly it was like, okay, there goes all of my extra free time. Maybe you
Yeah.
guys will find out about it one day. It's still on our
Yeah.
radar.
It's on the back burner. We
That's right.
have we have the Instagram name for it. We
That's
still
right.
have a
We did do.
great Instagram name for it. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. I also have an Instagram name for our van should that happen.
Do you? That's
Yeah.
funny.
Okay, let me get your approval because I can always save another one. Right
Okay.
now it's at Cozy Cruiser.
Oh, I like that.
Good,
Is
right?
this is the cruiser, is that gonna be with an S or a Z?
A
I
Z.
feel like if okay, yeah,
Wait, what were
cool.
you gonna say? Which one should it be?
With a Z. I
Okay, good.
just because yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
It's
other
just
one
I
wasn't
feel like
available, so
right,
luckily
right.
they're
That well,
both.
that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say if with cruiser is if it with an S isn't available, I think with a Z is perfect.
Yeah, it keeps biting me in the
Yeah,
ass though because all of our rentals, I mean, it is very on brand. They all start with cozy because that has always been my biggest priority. Is like the space has
yeah,
to feel cozy. But
yeah.
now it's like, which cozy are you talking about? Cozy cabin, cozy camp, cozy rock, cozy cruiser.
Cozy
It just,
cruiser. Yep.
yeah, it just
That's awesome.
gets
I love that name though. That's
right.
awesome.
I think Sean
Yeah,
came up with it. Now we're
yeah,
just looking for the right. We really want to get a good deal on the base vehicle because Sean's a mechanic, so he can like
yeah,
actually tell when we're getting a good deal.
yeah.
And if he has to do a little mechanic work on it and we get a better deal, so we just scour Facebook Marketplace all the time now until we find the
Nice,
right vehicle, and
nice.
then we're all in.
Cool.
So stay tuned for
Just make
Cozy Cruiser.
make make sure you get that username and stuff?
Oh, I already did. It's saved.
Okay, good, good,
Nailed
good.
it.
I was hoping you didn't say that without actually saying. Okay,
Nope, it's
good,
saved. Every day they
very good.
remind me, like, do you want to invite any of your friends to like
Yeah,
your count? And I'm like,
make your
no.
first post. Yeah,
Do you want to make your
that's
first
funny.
post? And I'm like, I don't even have a van. We have nothing to post here. But
That's funny.
you'll have to take a little adventure in it once it's done. Who knows when?
Definitely,
But that'll
definitely.
be
Hey, how far do you live from Banner Elk?
well. Our cabin is like
Right
in
there.
it's technically Boone, but sometimes it shows up. So Blowing Rock, Banner Elk, and Boone are all in the same places. Where are you going to Banner
Okay.
Elk?
Um, Out of Bounds Retreat. It's they're yeah, check out their Instagram. They're new. They're building. They're not done yet. I think you would
Amazing.
yeah, I think you would actually like the host. She seems really cool.
When are you
But I'll
going?
mid-July if you'll be down there, like second or third week.
Yes. Oh my gosh,
Okay,
I might even have it blocked off on my calendar because we have not been to Boone forever. We've just been it's like
amazing.
the redheaded stepchild.
hmm
Okay, mid-July.
hmm
Yeah.
Specifically
What are the days?
the week of the 9th.
Oh yeah, I'm totally here. Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
And Amelia, who works for me, is filming her horror movie. I know, that's so badass. I
Oh,
cannot wait to share it.
that's epic.
Yeah, it's so good. It's gonna be amazing. She's filming it that week, which means I could work remotely from the cabin. Okay, I'm gonna pull up those dates and see if I have any availability midweek, and I'll just go up there because it's so close. Oh my gosh, I could show
Yeah,
you all the great things of the area. Ethan, this will be so
amazing.
fun. Should we
Wow.
invite Spencer too? He's not that far away.
He's not that far away.
I
We
know.
should.
I mean, Cozy
Chattanooga, that's
Cabin can
close.
sleep like 12 people. Who else should we invite, Ethan? Let's have a cabin party. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
If you're interested, DM us. We're going to have a cabin party. Maybe this will be like a matchmaking adventure. If you live in that
Oh my God.
area, this is
Stop.
going to be so fun. I can't wait. Okay, I will look that up
Oh,
and send you a message
okay,
because I it's going to
cool.
take me forever to log into Guesty and do that.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I'll look it up, make sure I reserve some days. Wait, now hold on. I'm almost there. We're going to do this. We're going to do this real time. Sean, if you think that people aren't interested in this, you can just edit this part out. July.
Especially
Oh
the part where she's trying
no.
to make it a matchmaking service.
I'm so
Why is
bummed.
it
We have
booked?
someone there the 9th through the 15th. Okay, but I can still
Wow.
drive up for a day. I'll take a day
Yeah,
off and just drive
yeah,
up so
yeah.
we can hang out. Ugh, what a bummer. Okay, wait, where
So
are you
close.
staying? Are you staying at the Out of Bounds retreat?
Out of Bounds will be, I think, 10th to 12th, and then 13th through 15th. There was one other cabin that reached out to me that I just sent over my packages to
Which
every kid.
cabin? I know so many Boone cabins.
Hold on, let me go find my. You're doing it real time. I'm gonna do it real time.
Okay, good. Who is it? I mean, there's none that I don't like, so my feedback, no matter who it is gonna be like, "That is
Cool.
amazing."
It's one I hadn't stayed at before. All right. Name's Nick.
How many have you been to Boone, like the Boone, Banner Elk, Blowing Rock area?
I went to Appalachian A-frame,
Yes, Emily, we
which
interviewed her
is
last week. She's gonna be on the podcast like 1 or 2 episodes
oh
before you. I love her. Her husband is also a
amazing.
videographer.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, she's super
Very
cool. I
cool.
love her so much. But there's a bunch of good ones in that area. The Hillside House is in that
Yeah.
area.
I'll have to look that one out. If I mean this one hasn't like gotten back to my email, so like that one's very up in the air, but so
Ooh, maybe I'll message Lauren and see if the Hillside House has any availability, and maybe I'll just book a stay for myself at a cabin that I don't have to do any work on.
wow,
What
that
a
sounds
treat
nice.
that would be. Oh my gosh. Book your stay
What
on Airbnb.
shoot, I
I'm
just
checking the
had it.
Hillside House right now, and then I'm gonna check. They're booked. Now I'm gonna check the profile place because they're also right there, and it's also hosted by Lauren, who is amazing. And it's a condo, but it has the most amazing views. I love it. Okay, the profile place. We're gonna make this happen. If none of
Moon
these work,
A
what is it?
Moon A Chalet. Moon A Chalet in Blowing Rock. I'll send it to you
Ugh.
right now
Okay,
on
wait. What
Instagram.
days are you there? Because she has openings the 12th through the 15th on profile place.
So yeah, the 12th, 10th through 12th, and then 12th through the 14th would be where I'd be at the second one.
Okay, so maybe I'll look to book it for that. Let me know what you hear from them. Moon
Okay.
A
A,
Chalet.
yep.
Oh, I don't follow
Cool little
them.
spot.
Nick.
Nice
Oh,
little
this looks
spot.
awesome.
Yeah,
Okay, following. Oh, are they relatively new? They don't have any posts.
it looks pretty new. Yeah. For some reason, I thought I saw someone. Yeah, they have decent photos though.
Oh, they have real
Cool.
deer on their walls. I'm adding that to
I
our list
know.
of hot
I
topics.
saw that. I saw
Ooh,
that.
it's
I wasn't gonna say anything on the podcast,
Oh,
but I saw
sorry.
that.
I mean, the
No,
place
it's
looks
okay.
beautiful. You all should check it out. That's just a highly personal decor choice
Yeah,
that I'm now
I
adding to our
understand.
list of hot topics. Because I do
Yeah.
think, and here's the thing to know about the Boone area, is that it is like the Boone area, cabin culture has been a thing there forever. That's where I fell in love with cabin culture. That's where but originally, like all of the cabins that I went to were very cabiny. I'm talking like
Mhm.
bearskin
Like
rugs,
hunter
like
cabin.
hunter
Yeah,
cabins,
yeah,
yes. And
yeah.
honestly, my cabin, when I bought it, I decorated it very similarly. Now, I made a joke of the animal heads and put stuffed animal heads, like literally like stuffed animals. And now we have gold ones and they have like monocles on. So we've
That's
always
cute.
kind of made a joke
Yeah,
of that.
yeah,
Um, but that was a real thing in Boone. So I also feel
yeah,
like while I don't like dead animals, it is very on point for that particular market and what people
yeah,
expect when they're going to the mountains
yeah.
there. So
That makes sense.
no judgment, I just love animals, so that's hard for
Yeah,
me, but
same.
okay. We'll be in touch about I might just book the profile place because 'cause I've wanted to stay there anyway, and going to Boone in the summer is the best during the week to work remotely. I fucking love it.
Mhm.
Okay, this has been a treat. We'll talk again
Yeah,
soon, and hopefully I'll see you in July in the
absolutely.
mountains.
That'd be amazing.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcast in the reviews. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can find us on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin and at The Chalet Frame, spelled The Chalet, CHALA Frame. Looking forward to next week.